Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video, and today I'm doing a video on what went wrong with class. Now, for those of you who don't know, which I'm assuming is quite a few of you maybe, see what I did there, you'll figure out what I did there in a minute. But Doctor Who, Class is a Doctor Who spin-off from Doctor Who, so it's tries to connect to Doctor Who but be its own thing, and I guess it's finding that balance. And the thing is, I genuinely don't think a lot of people probably watched it, or maybe they did, I don't know, but I think I've got some notes here in my notebook, hence the reason why I've got this. But what was I going to say? Also I think I got a bit of bad reputation in the last video I did related to Class, where I think it was just on my thoughts of Class as a series as a whole. I think people got the bad end of the stick and or impression and thought I didn't like it at all and that I hated it. And the thing is, it's not that, I just don't I don't know, I think it's okay. I think, you know, there were some really good episodes, like the episode with Miss Quill primarily, the episode called, I think, Detained, where it was just them, the main cast, and that in a confined space, i.e. a classroom, and they all just sort of bounced off each other really well. I loved that story. I loved, as I say, the episode with Miss Quill. I loved episode 1. You know, I just think that there was quite a few missteps, and I think there was a lot of little problems that culminated in one big problem, or into one big problem. So, in at number 3, I've got, or on my notepad book thing, I've got having no Doctor Who character or a weak connection to Doctor Who. I think it was really only the Doctor that really connected it to Doctor Who. I think some people wanted a Doctor Who character to be at the forefront of this spin-off, or of a new spin-off, you know. Granted, I think the other two ideas they had for a spin-off in the works prior to Class would have been apparently Clara and Maisie Williams' character Lady Me coming back in the Space Diner, and that being a spin-off, which thank God that didn't happen, or a prequel to William Hartnell's era of Doctor Who, about the Doctor on Gallifrey before he was in his first incarnation or something, apparently, or whilst he was in his first incarnation, but really sort of early on, the backstory of the Doctor. And it's like, no, you just don't do that, because the show is called Doctor Who, you know, or Doctor Who even. And yeah, so I think both those ideas I'm glad didn't happen, and I think out of the 3, clearly Class was probably the best option out of the 3. It's, of this recording, 110% confirmed that we're not going to be getting a second series, which is annoying because there's a cliffhanger at the end of this series, and it would have been nice if they wrapped it up in a more way where it could have just ended that series. But if they were to continue, they could have, but it could have been open-ended, like how Sherlock ended. They can continue that on if they want to, like 4 years down the line, if Stephen Moffat wanted to, you know, continue on the story of Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and that, then, you know, he could. But if he wants to leave it for 4 years, as I've just said, he can also do that, you know, or just leave it forever, you know. But it isn't 100% closed, but it isn't 100% confirmed that they'll continue or pick it up in the future. But yeah, having no Doctor Who character or a weak connection to Doctor Who, I think, as I say, the only major Doctor Who connection they had was the Doctor, but besides that, that was it really. Or Coal Hill, I guess some people might argue, but besides that, I mean, Coal Hill wasn't even Coal Hill School, it was Coal Hill Academy, and that. And it was just, I don't know, it didn't feel connected to Doctor Who at all. So if you did like Class and that, and then someone was like, oh, well, you might like this show that it's primarily based around, you know, the Doctor, or that old guy is the Doctor and he's in this show, and then you showed them like series 8 or 9 and that, especially series 9, they would probably be like, oh, really? This is the main show this spin-off is sort of connected to? And might actually just like Class, but not Doctor Who, because as well, it just doesn't feel in any way familiar or like Doctor Who either, you know? It feels almost too detached in a way where, like, with Russell's Doctor Who, it gets criticised, or I've criticised it a lot in the past, for being a bit too earthbound and a bit too sort of like a soap, a bit like EastEnders meets Doctor Who, which nobody needs that. I'm looking at you, Dimensions in Time, I think it was called. And that, but then at least when he then did Torchwood, it kind of felt like, yeah, okay, Torchwood does still feel kind of Doctor Who-y. Yeah, you don't have the history episodes or the epic sci-fi-ness of like Doctor Who and the time travel aspect, but I could still see Torchwood fitting into Doctor Who, or Captain Jack weaving into Doctor Who, because there were quite a few episodes in Russell's era, as I say, which were set on Earth, whereas Class is very much set on Earth, but then Doctor Who's, especially in Steven's era, is so sci-fi and out there. Number 2, have one person write for the show, or having one person write for the show was detrimental to its somewhat failings, I think, you know. Yes, the person who wrote all the episodes did know the characters very well, but I think it made for a sort of, I don't know, it made for him to easily be burnt out, and I think it would have been a bit, or much better if he'd have even had a small team of, say, I don't know, 5 different writers, or 4 other writers, just to write the characters and have their interpretation of the characters, because it felt very contained and very exclusive, like it was an exclusive Penthouse type ordeal, when actually at the end of the day it's a TV show, and you know, and if it's a new spin-off from Doctor Who, if anything, it should be letting in new writers, you know, writers who have never written for science fiction-y stuff maybe before, or anything remotely like Doctor Who or anything like that, because if they were really good in Class, then maybe Stephen Moffat would be like, yeah, actually I might take this writer on board for Series 10 or, you know, Series 9 or whatever, do you know what I mean? So, or they could use it as a platform to go on to other sci-fi type stuff. But I think, as I say, like, it's almost like this writer sort of wanted his one idea from beginning, middle and end, and that's it. You know, he didn't want anyone else to tamper with it or interfere with it, but in doing so, it made it almost feel like, you know, there was a constraint there instead of, you know, there was an exclusivity and a constraint there, which reflects in the episodes, I think, you know. But yeah, number 1, the marketing was poor, and as such, and was not as good as it could have been, and could have been more aggressive with, and they could have been more aggressive with it. You know, like, I think the primary problem with Class was that the official Doctor Who Twitter, people were like, oh look, we've got this new thing to announce at 6 o'clock or 6 or 7 o'clock on whatever day it was, and then, you know, and then people were getting proper hyped up for a Doctor Who, you know, 8th Doctor miniseries McGann thing exclusive to Netflix, and we got Class instead. So people's expectations was here, Class is all the way down here. No wonder no one particularly liked it. If your expectations are up here, and then the show is even just vaguely down here, well, it's still going to be this shit, you know. If you're expecting this amount of epic, and all you get is even if you, as I say, get a sliver less of that epic, it will still feel like a shit ton less, you know. And I think the marketing was abysmal, because, as I say, like, you know, a week before Class aired, that's when we finally got advertisements. No less or no earlier and no sooner than that. 1 week leading up to Class, 1 week or 2 at a stretch, you know, not a month, not 2 months or a month or 4 weeks, yeah, or 3 or 4 weeks before Class. just 1 week before Class was aired, there was advertisements on BBC One. That just shows how bad it was. And you know, I think it was more, or marketing, if anything, is more needed for something like Class or Torchwood or Sarah Jane Adventures, because they're, although connected to Doctor Who, they're their own show in their own right as well. Whereas Doctor Who has its own legacy to draw from. Granted, it does it too much these days. People will agree with me there, hopefully. But even so, Doctor Who is a household name. People know what it is. Whereas no one knew what Class was. No one knew whether it was going to be good, whether it was going to be bad, whether it was going to be sexy or edgy or violent or boring or artistically inventive, which it actually quite was, you know, with the music and the direction, I thought. But I think it was limited in other ways where, like, you know, the creativity wasn't there. It was very dull in the setting sense. You know, the violence was way too over the top just for the sake of it. The romance just felt forced. I felt like, you know, it felt like it was trying to be Doctor Who and Torchwood in one. It felt like it was trying to be sort of Doctor Who in the sense that it felt like it wanted to be like Doctor Who in the sense that it wanted that threat level and that epicness, but it also wanted that maturity and that sort of sex and violence that Torchwood was renowned for. But the byproduct was something that just didn't work really, unfortunately. And that, it worked in some episodes, but not as a whole, I think. You know, I think Class was a good attempt at a spin-off, but wasn't successful. Hopefully most people can agree with me there, that it tried, but it failed, and it's conclusive that it failed because it's not getting a second series, so, and I think that was because of the fact that the way they announced it, the way they marketed it, the way that it wasn't like a Netflix original show, in the sense that it's not like you could just binge watch it in one go. For some weird reason it was episodic like Doctor Who or Torchwood, but it wasn't on primetime television, it was on BBC Three, so it's almost like the BBC immediately, that just is indicative of them being like, oh, okay, this is something we can just sort of push to the wayside, but that demographic uses this platform, so they will just watch it there. And it's like, well, no one did, so unfortunately. But yeah, thanks for watching, comment, rate and subscribe.